Now, last but not least, we have Parviz Koohafkan, who is the director of the Land and Water Division at the Food and Agriculture Organization in Rome. I see in his CV that he started out as a forester earlier in his life, but his focus today is going to be more on sustainable agriculture and specifically managing risk through ecosystem-based management approaches.
Yes, thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be here in IIASA, which is partly my place because I come very often here. We have very many programs here, and particularly global agroecological zoning program, which is also an important part of the work we are brought into this State of the World Land and Water Resources report, which I'm going to give some summary of it. We have been looking in this State of the World Land and Water Resources report for the last 50 years, what has happened to agriculture. 12% increase in world cultivated land, 117% irrigated increase, and of course we have gone 3 times food production, 200%. But when we look at the investment, we see that most of the investment for the last 50 years has been on prime lands and high potential areas, land and irrigation development versus land rehabilitation, water conservation, irrigation expansion, versus water productivity and water management, single crop production versus total farm productivity, and export crops versus food crops, and of course staple crops of poorer people. So this is, of course, the global picture seems very interesting because we have been successful in green revolution and producing much more food. But what has happened what has happened, of course, we did a lot of damage to our natural resources, starting from erosion, salinization, degradation of pasture lands, sand dune encroachment, desertification, of course climate change was mentioned, and ultimately to migration, which is also linked to many of these things. So we have had great achievements in green revolution, but we have still almost 900 million people hungry. And we should ask our questions. Was it really a good idea to increase so much production? And what is actually the impact in larger, particularly impact on poorer people and on food security? And these achievements should be, of course, again looked into in a more holistic perspective when we put ecosystem and natural resources into picture. We have created many systems at risk. David talked about a groundwater system, which is actually providing 40% of food is coming from pumping water, and this 40% production, of course, is reaching to its limit because there are so many small pumps around the world, and many of those areas, for example, in India and Andhra Pradesh, the production went down drastically by 90%. So what's going to happen to food security? There are many systems at risk, whether it's risk of climate change, like melting glaciers, whether a system of groundwater, as I said, or pollution or biodiversity. This is a snapshot of the systems at risk that we have been actually assessing. And when we go towards 2050, of course, we have a big problem. It was mentioned, population growth, but population growth, unfortunately, is not uniform in developed and developing countries. Where there are poor, we have 3 times more population growth. So what are we going to do with these population who are already very poor and who cannot really feed themselves or even have drinking water? Now, of course, it was just mentioned that eating meat is something we think about it, but of course what we eat is related to what we have as natural resources. For example, here, eating 1 kilo of meat, 15,000 liters of water, while having, a kilo of cereal is 10 times less. That it is well known, and of course change of diet. Additionally, there is another problem. The way we are consuming, the way we are producing, we have 30% food loss. What should we do with food loss? In addition to that, of course, changing in diet, especially in developed countries, but also in developing countries, in cities, we have problems related to health and what they call it rich diseases like diabetes, heart attack, etc., etc. Now, how can we manage our natural resources to balance addressing food security and preserving our ecosystem services, or ecosystem benefits? The major challenge and opportunity identified in this report are the small farmers. The small farmers and family farming are still feeding more than 60% of the world. They produce at least enough food, maybe not the best quality, not maybe enough, but for themselves. They are more than 1.4 billion people. So if we manage to actually help them to produce better, not only they could conserve environment, because many of their production systems are multi-layers, very diversified, but also they could stay where they are. They could be custodian of natural resources while at the same time they can contribute to food security. So this is a challenge, at the same time is an opportunity. We need to really build a system which of course has many dimensions. We have, of course, worked very much on knowledge and on market, but we didn't link culture, health, all those areas which are also, if we want to look at it in an integrated way, we should really include in our equation. Almost all the speakers spoke about intensification. Yes, intensification, but not simplification. Often, unfortunately, many of these intensification is a single-minded, single production, and we go intensify and we forget about the rest, and that is a real problem. We need to invest on all rural assets. We have invested essentially on land and water and genetic resources. These are the three major elements of Green Revolution. We need to invest on many other assets, particularly human capital. Financial capital, of course, is always important, but also social capital. This year is International Year of Cooperatives. That is a social issue, which is, of course, very important. In 2 years, we will have International Year of Family Farming. That's another very important social issues which we have to look at into the picture. We have many examples which we have tried to actually address some of these problems. Global Soil Partnership is a new partnership which we are building because the soil biodiversity is one of the most important ecosystem services. But we didn't really look at soil biodiversity. Mostly we thought soils are dirt, we put fertilizer, if it doesn't work, we add more, and obviously often we have problems. We can produce more, but we have lost a lot. Global agricultural zoning, I heard that there was already a presentation about this. Is a very important tool. We are moving towards a partnership and a consortium with many of colleagues and other institutions, and we hope to use it more in real-term scenario, particularly at national level, and looking at the livelihood system. We have a globally important agriculture heritage system program, which is very important. We have still 200 systems around the world which are unique in the world, and if we lose, we will lose it. This is a rice fish terrace system with irrigation complexity in China, which would be lost. And if we wanted to recreate this, would cost billions of dollars. So let's not lose these heritage systems, which bring together not only livelihood and food security, but also biodiversity. It brings culture, it brings indigenous knowledge, and it brings the beauty, landscape, which is so important. Now, we need to be action-oriented and really look on the ground. What is happening? A number of projects we have. For example, I mentioned the Andhra Pradesh program that we have. We looked at the groundwater and how to manage in a participatory way the groundwater. The farmers measure the groundwater themselves. they looked at the rainfall and tried to balance the water use through water use association, and particularly what we call it farmers' field school, using indigenous knowledge plus modern science. Thank you very much. This is my messages.